What's your title with CFC, Lee?
Uh, President and founder.
Welcome to another episode of the Recruiting Masters, brought to you by the CFC Insider. We're going to go to Jim right away.
Yeah, CanadaFootballChat.com had a big announcement this week about the launch of the Prospects game, and joining me now is president and founder of CanadaFootballChat.com, Lee Barrett. Lee, welcome to your very own show.
It's good to be on my first show.
Hey, Lee, tell me about the process behind this Prospects game, because I know that you've been working in earnest on this for about 3 years. There may have been some ramping up even before that that I don't know about. This has been a long process to come out to this outcome where we can have a national Prospects game.
Yeah, 3, 4, 5 years. It depends on which iteration of it, but yeah, it's the time is taking a lot of time, obviously. But first of all, I think when you come from just no understanding of television, you think that it's easy, right? And you think, oh, why isn't this on television? Why isn't this game on television? So you have to do a lot of research and get an understanding of the lay of the land and just how media works. And we did that for the first couple of years. And then as we thought this was a viable option for us, looking at how the biosteel game developed and really looking at that as a model in Canada, and obviously the U.S. Army Bowl or the Under Armour game in the United States as the comparable model in the United States. And again, just working through and trying to just gain as much knowledge as we could. So we and then started trying to network within TSN was really number one on our list, and there really wasn't a number two just because they're the football network, right? So we were patient, and as frustrating as years is to take something, I think that we're in a better position now, and I'm glad it took as long as it did, because through all the work that we've done, I think we're in a position to execute fairly well. Our ranking system's much better than it was 2 years ago. A lot of thanks to Clint and his process, and how he's improved it. So we feel really good about where we are. We've improved, and we did a test game 2 years ago in Ottawa. It was a non-televised test game, but we did test a lot of the operational stuff. So we've been working on this, as you said, for years, and it's been we're looking, obviously now it's going to get a lot more work if that's the execution game.
Tell us about the format and what kind of players that you're looking for in this process and how you're going to go about selecting them.
Yeah, so as far as players, the eligibility is really two big factors. So birth year, you're born in 2002 or later, so it's going to be mostly 2002s and maybe a couple 2003s that are just physically advanced and can compete with the 2002s, and they're on track to become a national in the CFL. So if you want to use the national definition and look at that, if you're on track to become a national in CFL, that you're eligible to be in the game. So that's the criteria. As far as being chosen, it could be a one-step process, a two-step process, or a three-step process for the kid, and I'll explain what that means. So if you're one of the top 5 or 10 players in the 2002 class, you're probably going to get invited in February. It's really player 10 through 70 that's going to be the tougher decisions and the more work that we'll have to do to identify those players. So we will have in March some invite-only tryouts in more than likely 4 locations across the country. And before that, we will have some open showcases, more than likely in January, again, at some locations across the country. Now, we might invite some kids before those combines in January so that they wouldn't have to go to those January ones. But obviously, if you're not invited by the time those showcases in January come up, then you want to do it. You can go right on CFCprospectgame.com, which you can find on CanadaFootballChat.com, and nominate a player. You can nominate yourself, and you nominate a player, and we'll take a look at you. So it's for the best kids, the 5-10 kids, we know who those are. It's going to be, player 10 through 65. That's going to be the tough decisions, and we'll have to do more work to evaluate them in person.
I'll open it up to you guys. You're part of this exercise. You're a high school football coach. What questions do you have for Lee on this?
Is this game, do you have a permanent home for this game? Is it going to travel around? What's your plan for where the game's going to be located?
Yeah, the game appears like it'll be located in the first year. It'll be in Ottawa. Do we have a plan to keep it there forever or rotate? We don't have either. So it's we plan for it to be in Ottawa, and we don't have a plan to move it, but if there's a reason to move it, we would. So that's our approach with the location.
I don't really have too many questions. I mean, I speak to Lee pretty frequently. I'm just excited about the fact that at the long end of a journey, he's kind of achieved his main effort or his goal. So I'm more excited about the fact that we'll have those combines. Those combines will confirm those kids, and then being just a coach and a player and watching people compete. That's what I'm most excited about. I mean, we'll have a chance to highlight the top however many players in the country, and now for the first time ever, we're going to get a chance to see them go head to head, and we're also going to get a chance to see them in a combine format where those numbers, people in Canada seem to think they're not that important. They're hugely important, and if a kid follows that up with an outstanding performance in the game, if they're that much further ahead with their numbers and their performance, those are the kids who are going to get recognition throughout North America. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited for watching kids really take off at this level and maybe get the opportunities that they never got in the past. That's what's exciting for me.
Lee, since you've made this announcement, what sort of feedback have you got, especially from NCAA schools and U Sports schools?
I think with the U Sports schools, they're kind of busy right now, and the NCAA schools, so I haven't got a lot of feedback. I did get a few text messages. It was actually mostly from teams that were on buys, but did get a few text messages asking a few questions and congratulations for sure. So I'm going to wait until their seasons are over to engage them. They're just busy trying to get ready for their next opponent. But, I definitely had some text messages and some in-face conversations with some of the local teams. And, everyone's excited. I mean, they kind of, what I find a lot of the people are doing, is obviously players and coaches or ex-players, is they're kind of putting themselves back in when they played and how they would have loved this opportunity to have this game when they played. So I think that's what it brings it back to a lot of us older guys is, this is kind of neat, and it would have been neat if I had that when I played.
How do you make sure that something like this is sustainable year after year and this isn't a one-off and it's not going away any day too soon?
Yeah, I think that comes in on the business side of it. We have to maximize our sponsorship and marketing opportunities to make it a viable regular event. In the media world that is today, you can't, like you may have been able to do 10 or 20 years ago, is sell all the commercial inventory and pay for the game. So it's much more complex than it. You have to package it all together as one big package, the online and offline, the events, the television, etc. So that's my main focus, so that everything we've done with CFC has been done to make it sustainable and with that professional approach, so that it isn't a one-off. Because I'm sure as you've seen throughout 20, 30 years, stuff like a CFC pop up and 6 months later it's not there anymore. So you have to attach some intelligent business marketing opportunities and work with as many partners as you can, and it's going to take time. So again, I think with the years that we've gone through this process, it sets us up originally to have a good business model in the first year and then build on it from there on in.
Once again, for people that want to find out more information about this, where can they go?
They can go to CanadaFootballChat.com. There is a link to the CanadaFootballChat.com prospect game, or you could go to CFCProspectGame.com directly. There's some information on there now. You can nominate a player now, and within the next 3 to 4 weeks, the information on the January showcases and events that you can go to promote and market yourself will be announced in the next 2 to 4 weeks.
Lee, thanks very much for coming on. Appreciate this. This is an exciting announcement, and it's going to be a great event. Thanks very much for your time on this.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure, and kudos to you guys. Have done a great job with the recruiting masters, and I've got a lot of great feedback from everyone across the country. So I appreciate you guys doing a great job.
Oh, thanks very much for that. Now I hand it back over to you. You're supposedly the host of this thing.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get back online then. Usually every week we start off with the week with the players of the week. So we'll jump right into it. Offensive player of the week is running back Bowden Koku. Actually, Krown Labelle, which we talked about a week ago. The Wolves. He's a 2021, so he's a long ways off. He actually was the backup. He was behind a CFC 100, probably not too much longer. He had 29 carries for 262 yards and 4 touchdowns, and his team won a huge game, 38-30. Being an O-lineman, Gord, 29 carries for 262 probably is something that you can appreciate.
I'm glad you set me up for that one because I was going to say you have a backup jump in and run for that.
Yeah.
That's probably a good testament to the offensive scheme and the performance of the offensive line. And so Krown Labelle obviously having a good year up front as well. Not to take anything away from Bowden Koku, who has got to make things happen. Like a running back can screw up a well-blocked play by making the wrong read or not being able to hit the hole. So good job by him to jump in, and I'm going to jump ahead a little bit on you here because you talked about the offensive line, and I was talking about it being scheme-proof. Well, you're going to go to Vancouver College and talk about their offensive line. Noah Hochfelder here, I think, is your lineman of the week.
Yes.
And talk about a school that has just offensive line, a cohesive offensive line unit year in, year out. I mean, that's a great example of exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep. You know what? I watch a lot of film of high school offensive line play. And I would say that Vancouver College is probably one of the top high school offensive lines with regards to technique and play in their system. They go right up there with like St. Andrews College in Ontario, who has a great offensive line year in and year out. So they're up there, and they do a great job with it. And then just to go back to Noah, who was our lineman of the week, not this weekend, but last weekend, the Vancouver Irish had an outstanding game and did really well against another team in the Lower Mainland. So kudos to him.
Do they wear orange, by the way?
Well, yeah.
Picked apart a really difficult defense that weekend.
Oh, yeah. So we were definitely bleeding orange that day.
I got a question for you about high school programs and offensive lines and good traditions. You know, you talk about Vancouver College. That tradition, especially on the offensive line, goes back at least 4 decades. Mm-hmm. You're a high school coach that's building a program in its first year.
Yeah.
How difficult is it to build that foundation from the offensive line out?
It's the hardest position to build, especially when you're new. But there's just so much that goes into it. For starters, excellent technical offensive line coaches are very few and far between. They're difficult to duplicate, and Vancouver College always seems to have a really good coaching staff around that offensive line. They'll bring in recent alumni to work with their freshmen, work with their JV groups, and kind of mentor them in as well. And one of the big things that they use as their approach with the offensive line is they've got multiple bodies working with that, multiple coaches working with that offensive line at all times. Another luxury they're able to have at Vancouver College that we're not able to have, and most programs aren't, is that their offensive linemen typically are just offensive linemen. They don't have to worry about the other side of the ball. So they're able to get more work in. Because the offensive line position is just so technical, it's almost to the extent of being a quarterback. And so being able to have all of that extra time to work your indie stuff, work your technique, work your body movements, that kind of stuff, can be really, really helpful. And then the other thing that you can do that Vancouver College does well as well is you can scheme to make your offensive linemen's lives as easy as possible. Mm-hmm. They give them a good run scheme that allows them to double team at the front at the first level, get people moving, and then climb to the second level. They try and give them as easy a read as possible. But back to your original question, really, really difficult to build. I mean, we're having our struggles on offensive line right now, and Part of that comes from the lack of an off-season program. I mean, that's where you're going to get exposed if you're undersized and under strength. But there's just so much processing and technique that goes into that position. It's really difficult to pick up and hit the ground running there.
Let's stay in BC with your defensive player of the week.
Defensive player, Tyler Klotz, back. Last week, Kelowna almost upset the number 1 team in the province, Lord Tweedsmuir. In that game, I watched some of the film or his highlights from that particular week. Tyler had 13 total tackles and 19 tackles and 3 TFLs. He honestly, I know he's a little undersized. He looked like a young Zach Thomas. Like he was like coming in on the back door of things. He was getting over top of things. He was cutting things in half. It was actually his film was really impressive. He obviously is going to have some limitations, but like his film was truly, truly impressive.
Well, that was a really, really good effort for that Kelowna program. One that they have the infrastructure in place to be able to climb up and challenge the elites, but it hasn't come together for them consistently over the last number of years. They've had a few standouts that have carried them up to some heights, Taylor Loeffler being one of them, Parker Simpson more recently. They don't have that this year, but they have a good young coaching staff. Chris Cartwright's the head guy out there, former of Acadia. And he's doing a really good job up there. Unfortunately, they took a bit of a step back just the other day, coming down to Mission Secondary School and losing by a big scoreline. But this was a big effort for them. And Klotzbeck, you're right. I like the athleticism of this kid. And he seems to not be afraid to really bust through the line and challenge bigger bodies. So he's playing beyond his size, that's for sure.
Athlete of the week. The only thing that changes here are the stats from week to week because I keep seeing this name.
Austin Ballin. Like, again, I look at these lists and I'm like, okay, I talk to the people who grab all the stats from everywhere, and we go through these lists and we're like, who this week? And we go through 19, 20, 21, and then kids on the 100. We look at kids off in the 60 list. We look at kids who are not a 100 at all, and like every week his name comes in the top 3, either as a offensive defense. You could have actually put him in 3 of the. You know what, Austin? Why don't you play O-line? You want to show me something? Play O-line. Anyways, Austin had 21 carries for 324 yards and 4 touchdowns offensively. And like he does every week, he had 9 tackles, so close to that double-digit tackle and a pick. So, I mean, he's probably going to be the player, I would imagine, the player of the year in the province. And when we start putting our CFC All-Canadians together at the end of the high school season, when you do our CFC All-Canadian teams, he will definitely be in the conversations for that, no doubt about it.
In the conversations, I think he could end his season today and still be on that team.
Yep. Oh yeah, I gotta let him pick the team. Anyways, only if he plays O-line. Okay. So anyways, and just a quick shout back to Coach Cartwright. I actually coached him at Acadia. He does it the right way. He's a super classy kid. He comes from, I call him a kid because I coached him. Comes from a super classy family. So good for him, good for the program. I know it was a step back, like you said. Just there is a CFC, there's a few CFC 100s at Kelowna, and I'm just going to throw out the name Nolan Ulm. Those of you who are recruiting out west, recruiting in the interior of BC, remember the name Nolan Ulm. He is a CFC 100. Moving along, because I know we're kind of crunched for time. CanadaFootballChat.com just pushed out their most recent list of the CFC 100 for the class of 2019. There are 6 athletes who came onto that list. We're not going to be able to spend a lot of time on all of them, but we'll make an effort right now to push their names out. Some of them we've already talked about, some of them we haven't. So we'll spend a little bit more time on those that we haven't talked about. Anyways, just to kick it off, defensive end Tanner Hawley, we spoke about him probably 4 weeks ago. He's the 6'7" man-child from Holy Cross in Kingston. I think he's one of the better defensive end prospects, probably in Ontario. He has the frame that could become a left tackle, 6'7". He also has the frame that could turn into an interior or an outside guy, both at the U Sports and the maybe the NCAA level, more the U Sports level. I don't know if you guys remember the film or if you want to add to that or.
I like him on both sides of the ball. I think I like him a little more on the defensive side of the ball. And if he can stick and learn to get his body down and anchor against the run consistently, I could see him being an absolute terror as a defensive end in say, the OUA or something like that. I don't know what's in the water out in the Kingston Township where Holy Cross is, because for whatever reason they seem to have all sorts of huge kids come through that school. I mentioned a few weeks ago when we talked about him that Matt O'Donnell initially went there before transferring to St. Andrews College for his last couple years. Josh Prinzen was another guy I played with at Queens who came out of there 6'8", 6'9", something like that. I mean, it's just freaks all over the place. I don't know what's going on.
And the question that I have here is that at 225 and with his frame, how much can he add to that and still maintain speed? He can still grow. This guy.
Oh, yeah, totally. He has a frame that could put on mass amounts of weight. Call me crazy. I know Queens is going to probably be encouraging him to stay in the local area. A kid like that, though, I kind of, when I saw his film, I was like, oh, he'll look good in purple. So, I mean, but not that I want to.
Crazy.
Yeah.
You're just stirring the pot.
Anyways,
Stirring the pot.
I'll change gears.
You want him to go to Bishops?
Bishops could use a guy like that right about these days.
Yeah, not even touching that one either. Moving along, there's a young man. He's a 3 technique, an interior defensive lineman, 3 tech or nose tackle. His name's Isaiah Latander. He's from Calvin High School in Winnipeg. He's a 6'3", 265-pounder. I saw him both his film last year, and I saw him this summer. Outstanding, like that one-gap, penetrating defensive lineman who I think has a really bright future. I know he's starting to get some U Sports offers, but I'm not sure if he's one of that group of like 8 that Dobie has already got lined up for Manitoba's class next year. But he's awesome one-gap, penetrating defensive lineman.
And there's been some success by going local and by what Brian's been able to achieve on the defensive line. I mean, Onyemata is up here in comparison to the rest of them. But, I mean, you can even go over to the defensive end and the way that he worked with Evan Foster coming out of junior football. There's been lots of success.
Don't forget Evan Gill.
Yeah, and there's been lots of success stories out of Manitoba, and he might be wise to stay home in this case.
I think so. You know what? His film was really impressive. So, I mean, he's actually a bigger version of Gill.
If that's possible.
Yeah. So, well, not at the end. He was big at the end. Onyemata, just not to get hung up too much, Onyemata, like, what's truly been impressive about him is how much he's progressed as a pro the last 2 years.
In the NFL.
Like, it's insane, like, how much he's developed and how his ceiling was, like, you watch him the first year and then, like, I watched him on TV when Drew Brees broke the record, and it was just like his ceiling is going up and up and up.
It was fun. I don't want to get too far off topic here, but it was fun watching David Onyemata take off the training wheels in his first year when he was first playing, which was really his second year. Where he was just a physical presence. It's like he didn't know where he was on the field. And then in his next year, he kind of knew where he wanted to go on the field, and he'd hit gaps, but just by his physical presence, he kind of finished plays. And then in his third year, he started to become that kind of player. But what you're talking about, Onyemata as a pro, that also happened to him at the university level too. He kept doing this, and he continues to do this.
Well, and Evan Gill was the other starting defensive tackle for Manitoba that season. I had a game in Winnipeg that was like a burn the film kind of day for me, and those two just not so much Onyemata, but Evan Gill just embarrassed me in that game. But I was watching them. They're actually playing right now as we speak, and I was watching him before I left home, and he's flying all over the field. One of the best defensive tackles in one of the better defenses in the NFL right now. And between him and Akeem Hicks, who's another guy that's worked himself up to Pro Bowl level coming out of the U Sports ranks, it's really impressive seeing what those two do on a weekly basis with the U Sports banner attached to them.
So I guess the 1 yard off the ball doesn't hurt that much.
And also, I should say the verbal calisthenics that the announcers have to do to try and figure out where, like, he's today he was born in, he's from Nigeria, but played university football in Canada.
Oh, I can't even, the first I saw Enyemana's name, I was like, not even going there.
At least he didn't play at the Alabama of Canada.
Yeah. Jeez.
Speaking of the names,
This is a former coach of the Alabama of Canada.
Speaking of names, here's a name for you. He's from CFC50 Miller, so in Regina. His name's Isaac Bertzel Tyndale. 6 foot, 200 pound. He plays linebacker. He plays fullback. Plays running back. Saw him in the summer. Very thickly built and very physical, and he just plays the game the right way. Like, he just seems to be that natural football player who has that uber competitive streak and just makes things happen. I was really impressed with him both in the summer and from the film last year. I don't know if you guys want to.
Talent coming out of the prairies these days. It seems like we're talking about somebody new from Saskatchewan and somebody new from the Winnipeg area every single week. So that's got to feel good for the coaches in that part of the world. Particularly, Stephen Bryce typically does a pretty good job of keeping Regina guys in town. I know Scott Flory's working on making some inroads there too. And of course, the Winnipeg guys tend to stay home at the University of Manitoba. Good news for those schools who are on, at least Saskatchewan is on the upswing right now for sure.
I wouldn't count Calgary out of the bidding as well in this case. They've got a pretty good foothold in BC, all things considered. Now's the time to spread their net outside of BC and Calgary.
Yeah, they're recruiting right across the country, and they seem to, they probably recruit a whole bunch of people, but they seem to target our 100s, our CFC 100 lists, quite a bit, and they've had a tremendous amount of success working those lists. So, yeah, there's no doubt in my mind, they're going to be working pretty much everywhere, because they do. The fourth one on here, I don't know if we're going to get to all 6, but we're going to talk about this fourth one. He's probably my favorite one off the 6 going in or on right now. His name is Kevin Namwisi. If you get a chance to watch his film, he is a legitimate, I'll use the term man-child, from Franco Cité in Ottawa. He almost looks like a pro player already, and the way he runs around and just the sheer shock and violence in his game is truly, truly impressive. I'm really interested to see how he develops, and actually, if he starts to get some attention, I don't know why he hasn't gotten a lot, but just to see how and where this young man goes from here. I really liked his film.
Well, and given that he goes to a Francophone school in Ontario, if I was Sherbrooke, I'd be going and visiting him on a regular basis. I mean, that's the type of guy that on that side of the ball could be a basis to start turning things around for them.
Yep. Well, when I looked at his film, I was like Junior Turner, University of Montreal, via the Vanier Cheetahs.
Yeah.
That's what I saw. And I'm like, I'm sure.
Like a raging bull that just kind of needs to be refined a little bit.
Oh, totally. But I'm like, I'm sure Machocha's probably knows who he is already. He's probably talked to him a few times. But yeah, really super impressive. The other two, I will just do a shout out to them, is Braden Stubbs, running back from CFC50 Vincent Massey. Real good hockey player who's turned into a real good football player. And then the lone BC kid who jumped onto the list in this iteration or this version of the list, Aiden Bertuzzi, big, tall rush end from CFC50 Mount Doug. So congratulations to you 6 for making the most recent version of the list.
You mentioned Stubbs. I got to get something in there. Nick Dembski was the last guy that fit the description of really good hockey player, really good running back, and then he chose football. So also out of Winnipeg. So there you go.
Well, he's that type of athlete. The kid's athletic.
Yeah.
Last week we made a couple comments about Kevin Mitali from Andre Gassette, the receiver. We were like, somebody offered the kid. All right, good enough. Delaware State offered him this weekend or last weekend, which is awesome. So we're going to see if we can keep this going. There is a young DB/linebacker. He's on the CFC60, goes to New Mexico Military Institute with half of their roster being from Canada. His name is Enoch Maconzo. Those of you who get a chance, watch his film and tell me how he does not fit into that college system that's being run in the States right now, that hybrid strong safety Sam linebacker. You need to watch his film, and you need to see this young man run around and make plays all over the field. So, offer the guy.
Listen up in Dover.
What's that?
Listen up out there in Dover.
Is that what it is? You have no idea.
That's the capital of Delaware.
Oh, okay, there you go. Now that might be where Delaware is, not Delaware State. You might be in trouble.
I was going to say, I thought it was just a city.
That's a real good program, though, isn't it?
Eh?
I know Delaware has the FCS. They have really good FCS programs.
Well, and Delaware State has 3 Canadians on their roster.
Yep.
Michael Chris Ike
Yeah.
2
Who
weeks
just did a
ago
really good
just
job.
ripped off a 80-odd yard
DSU
game.
a little bit
Yeah.
less renowned than the University
Yeah.
of Delaware, I think, in the large grand
little
scheme
bit,
of
yeah.
things. But
Yep.
still, good home, and that's the type of that's a traditional FCS type of state, a smaller state
Yep.
with their 2 state schools. Up in that New England area where that's where most of the programs fit in, and New Hampshire's at that level too. So is Maine. So there's a good little circuit going on in the northeast part of the country at the FCS level.
Yeah, it's a big deal, yeah.
And a lot of them are interested in Canadian players. You bring up Maine. I mean, they've feasted on bringing Canadian players in to
And surprisingly,
add
not
to-
just
Deshaun
Eastern.
Stevens is having a great year in Maine.
Yep.
Well, and surprisingly, not just Eastern Canadian players too. Like they don't stick to the seaboard, Quebec, Atlantic Canada, or something like that. They spread a wide net. We had Grant McDonald go out there from Greater Vancouver area. Deshaun Stevens is from Brampton, I believe. So they obviously.
Ted Kabongo, that's out at UBC now, that transferred back.
Toronto area guy, wasn't he?
Originally from Calgary.
Was he okay?
Yeah, the
So
running back
it's
from
all
Notre Dame.
over the place. So.
They do well, and we spoke to a coach from Delaware State this week. They have a large number of Canadians who they're actively trying to put together information on and possibly recruit. So good for them. I still think I don't get why some of those teams don't go to CEGIP. Like I don't. Anyways, that's a whole other conversation. Moving along, one last thing we notice each week, fast risers. This week we had some stats pushed to us. Young quarterback from Holy Names in the Windsor area. Well, the starting quarterback for there is Jake Hayden, who's a CFC 100. They're a CFC 50. And we were like, okay, what's going on? And we actually looked into it. And Matthew Gannett, he's the JV quarterback. However, he still went 8 for 10 for 270 with 4 touchdowns. Had 50 yards rushing and 1 touchdown. So in terms of seeing the young buck early on, we saw you, Matt. We're going to start tracking you a little bit more. That's a really good job you did this last week, the week before in that game. So congratulations. That was a really good effort. Running short on time. We'll try and burn through this. See if we can just touch on it really, really briefly. Negative recruiting.
Oh, we've heard a lot about that out on the trail, haven't we?
Yeah, so
And a lot of coaches do it.
yeah, well, and you know what? I had some questions about it. We started looking into it. And what does a player do when a coach uses negative tactics in an effort to recruit him to his school? So what I'm saying is talks bad about all the other schools.
You don't want to go to so and so because of whatever.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys want to touch that.
Well,
If you wanna-
what's the difference of a coach coming in on a negative basis, either talking innuendo versus talking depth chart? Because, you'll never get beyond this in your first 2 years because they've got this, and this there. That's a fact.
That's a fact.
That's a fact. But the stuff beyond the depth chart, that's innuendo. And I'd put a big red flag up when it comes to that sort of stuff.
Total. Like, if you're getting a coach and he's talking more negatively about another school than he is actually talking positively about his own program, that would tell me a lot about his character, and that would be a red flag right away.
It also tells you a lot about his program.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't necessarily. It's not necessarily just the coach himself. He doesn't have much going on there if he's spending more of his time talking about his rivals.
Remember, he's there to sell you on his program and him. He's responsible for that program.
Yep.
That's what he's selling, not the negative option billing over on the other side.
So anyways, if you want an answer to that question, it's a red flag. Look at your other options and take a long, hard look, revisit that school and see, do you really want to be part of something like that? Because I'm sure that's probably a program issue if it's like that. And sticking yourself into a negative setting and listening to people basically throw out just information, random information about their opponent, which has probably beat them 6 of the last 8 times. All right? That's probably where I'd look at that, red flag it, and look at your options.
You want a coach focused on what he can control.
Yeah,
and he can't control those other teams.
No, he can't.
He wants that's the message that you want to get from him. Someone who's focused on his program.
Well, and you can choose your own approach on this too. But if a coach asks you who else is recruiting you, you're under no obligation to tell them.
No.
And that's often where these things start. Is so who else is talking to you right now? Oh, Western. Well, they've got 8 running backs that you'll be behind on the depth chart. I mean, you don't even have to have that conversation.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I just got a bunch of school. There's a number of schools talking to me right now. Some in the States, some in Canada. Not really sure where I'm leaning. Let's talk about you.
Yeah.
Yep.
What are you offering me?
Yep.
Yeah.
So just to kind of tie it all off, you know what? Red flag it. Look at all your options and basically ask yourself the question, do you really want to put yourself into that kind of setting? So I just want a quick shout out. I know that over the last 2 weeks, the Raymond Comets and the Ernest Manning Griffins have been touched negatively by car accidents, so on and so forth. Some of the kids got hurt. Some of them got worse than that. So our thoughts go out to you, to the families affected by it, and to the programs themselves. So best wishes from us. I don't know if you want to tie off with that. Or...
We can tie off with that. I think everybody knows where this show is by now. I think that's a good way to go out.
Thanks for your time. Hopefully everybody is having a great week of prep, and good luck next week.